Anybody can throw well in practice, but staying consistent when the pressure's on, that's what separates the good from the great. I'm going to tell you how to do that. If you haven't met me yet, I'm Michelle Thompson, aka Cornhole Mish. I am a cornhole commentator, sideline reporter, and I've been helping people get out of their heads and into their bodies for peak performance for over 15 years. The question I get asked more than anything else is how do I be more consistent? It's actually not a very good question, no offense, because it's so nuanced. The reason we're inconsistent actually has less to do with your mechanics than it has to do with the mental side of the game. And the problem with that is when people are inconsistent over a night, over a course of weeks or months or years, they always go back to the practice field. I need to just hit the boards more, throw more bags in the hole, and I will automatically be more consistent. If I just rep the heck out of this game, then my bag will stay down the center and in. And I know that sounds really lovely. And I wish it was that easy because, man, that would be a pretty simple fix. Unfortunately, though, what's making you inconsistent has less to do with your mechanics and more to do with your mindset. And the reason why is because your performance happens in a certain state. And that when we're practicing, we're in a different state than when the pressure's on. And it's very hard to create that same state at home. So, to become more consistent, what we really need to do is understand what is making us inconsistent beyond mechanics. In other words, if you could go back and assess an entire tournament, don't ask yourself, how did I throw that game, right? Maybe you threw a 5 PPR one game and a 9 PPR the next game, and you go, what the heck happened there? Did I forget how to throw? No, it's actually very complex why that happens. The good news is, in that example, you have a PPR that's a ceiling of 9 or 10 or whatever it is. And yes, that floor is low as well, but the great news is those are happening in two completely different states. If you are locked in flow or play, I promise you you're not throwing a 5 if your ceiling is a 9. It's just not going to happen. So when we look back at a tournament and we kind of assess what went wrong, it's maybe difficult to do post tournament, but if you can put yourself back in the game in which you did not throw your best and ask yourself, how did I feel? What state was I in? Was I in worry, mindless, play, and flow? I think the worry state at this point, if you've listened to any of my content, is fairly obvious. The thing that really gets people when I've had conversations about this is they don't necessarily know they're in the mindless state because hello, it's mindless. And so they say, I don't think I was worried. I mean, I felt okay. I wasn't overly nervous, but I threw like crap. And my guess is that you were in the non state, right? You weren't in play, you weren't in flow, you weren't in worry, you're in mindless. And this can happen just because we're using substances like alcohol, which is fine. It's not, and this is no judgment, but just know that it may not be your most consistent performance. Um, or it could just be because we were just checked out, we just weren't present. So we weren't necessarily checked into worry, but we also weren't checked into the game, not in a really focused way. So we're easily distracted, our mind's kind of somewhere else. It can also happen just because we didn't get enough sleep or we're just tired from a long day of playing bags. I mean, there's so many reasons why we can go into a mindless state, but know that it's like a protective state. You're basically, your body's like offline. Everything's offline. It's like, I don't know, just get through it. And you may not be able to recognize that in the moment because when you're mindless, you're not conscious enough to even know you're in a different state. So my guess is your inconsistency is coming from the obvious worry state, which is easy to identify. Oh, I was in the worry state. That's obvious. That's why I played bad. Or it's because you're in the mindless state, which is less noticeable. I worked with binge eaters for years. I was also a binge eater. So I know what it feels like to check out so much that you don't even have any conscious awareness of what's happening. Like I was not deciding to keep eating. In fact, in that example, I was trying very hard to not keep eating, but something else takes over. And it's not until you kind of come out of it that you go, whoa, what just happened? So just know the mindless state is a difficult state and it's totally normal if you go into that, especially if you can identify patterns, like when I don't sleep enough, when I don't have enough rest in between games, when I drink too much, all those things. Notice what can trigger that. Or if you're a worry state person, there's all kinds of content on my channel about what to do about the worry state. And I'd say that one's actually more simpler to deal with because it's so obvious. So, first step, notice what state you're in when you're not throwing your best before you jump into mechanics. When it comes to consistency, what's super important is going to be your routines and rhythms. Here's the thing about routines and rhythms. You have them whether you intentionally set them or not. When you first started to play Cornhole, you created some kind of mechanics that you repped. And that is what your automation is going to play out. So let's hope you started off with reps and mechanics that you actually like. But we're not going to talk a lot about mechanics here because that is something that a lot of people focus on already. I want to know what you're automatically doing when it comes to the mental part of the game. You have routines before, during, and after games, tournaments, shots, misses, wins, losses, whether you set them intentionally or not. And this is when you notice inconsistencies. Because if those routines and rhythms are A, not playing out the same way every time, assuming you actually want them, then that's going to create inconsistency. Or B, you have all these patterns in place that are dysfunctional, that create worry state, that create spiraling, that create overreactions. And then now you're just literally setting yourself up to be inconsistent. So what we want to do is really intentionally take a look at what the heck are we doing all throughout the game in terms of these automatic responses, because you have them, right? And when it comes to shots, like if there's a bag in a certain spot, you have an automatic reaction. That's what we want. We want as much automation as humanly possible. That's how you're going to be the most consistent. However, that automation better be functional. It better be good. It better be very intentional and leads you to success. So notice what your current routines are. Ask yourself if they're working. Do you like them? And then intentionally create ones that do work. That has to happen in practice. You have to rep it. You have to rep every part of this. What you do when you walk into the building, what you do before a tournament, what you do before a game, before a shot, after, misses, wins, losses, all of that needs to be actually thought about and intentional and really, really productive and efficient. So take an assessment of what you're currently doing, ask yourself if it's working, and then create solutions and then rep them and create new patterns, new routines, new habits that lead you to success and consistency. The last part of this consistency conversation is going to be recovery. What happens when things go awry? The difference between the good and the great is how quickly they're able to recover. Now, the truth is, for most people, recovery is not going to happen in the 3 to 5 seconds when your opponent is throwing their bag. So, a lot of you are going to have to take timeouts, especially in the early part of learning to have better routines and better recovery. And what I mean by this is if you just missed a massive shot and gave up 7 points, the likelihood that you can completely shift, or A, likelihood that you won't respond emotionally and react is very slim unless you have really, really practiced this. And then the other part of that, let's say you have reacted and responded because you're human, then the likelihood that you're going to recover from that in the 3 to 5 seconds that that bag is released from your opponent is so slim. You have to take a timeout here. You have to take the time to give your body a chance to reset. That recovery is so key. That is the difference between giving up that one 7 point round and the entire game. I was recently watching a game. I saw somebody crumbling and they never took a timeout. You could see, like, physically the shoulder starting to slump forward. You could see the head down. You could see the defeat all over their face. And they just kept throwing and missing, throwing and missing. Maybe one goes in and then a miss, miss, miss. One goes in, miss, miss. Like, stop what you're doing. You are in a state that is never going to work. Your inconsistency is due to your recovery not happening in the amount of time that you're trying to force it to happen. You're going to need more time. And if you have a really bad game, Go recover from it. Do something. Don't just sit there and allow that automation to happen where you beat yourself up and you're negative or whatever it is that you automatically do after a bad game. Create a new recovery routine that actually moves you into the next state, the play, the flow state, something productive, something helpful. Be intentional with that time because you don't know how much time you're going to have. You could go from one, especially if you're in the loser's bracket, you could lose a game and go right into another game, but you do have a couple minutes. You take that couple minutes and you do whatever you're practicing to reset and bring you back into the state where you're going to do your best. Thanks so much for tuning into this video. Please subscribe to see more content like this. And I want to know in the comments, now that we've talked about consistency, if you weren't able to say, I'm just going to practice more, I'm just going to work on my mechanics, what would you say is the thing that would actually help increase your consistency? Hint, hint, we talked about it in this video. So please use what you learned here and think about what you could do to be more consistent in the future that has nothing to do with just repping slides down the middle. I challenge you to do that. And of course, you can always grab the $9 mental reset kit over on my website to help you create these recovery and reset routines.